Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. I really appreciate all of you today joining me from here in New Orleans at the New Orleans Convention Center. It's great to be with you. Tomorrow is the Super Bowl. Uh, have just gathered so much Raiders information. I want to talk to you about it today and really fill you in on some gaps. And I've been trying to put some pieces together. If you didn't see my podcast the other day, I suggest you go back and watch it even before you watch this one, because I'm going to go back and revisit some of those things and paint in the picture a little bit. But I told you how many people believed that Tom Brady and was able to sell Chip Kelly on uh, the plan that the Raiders have at quarterback. And I told you I have no idea what it was, but it was my job to begin digging. I don't even know how many people I spoke to. Literally, I have no idea. But I talked with people all over the league who know Brady, who know Chip, who know both, who know Pete, um, obviously know Spytech. And I did not get one name. So I want to make that really clear. But I did get a very strong consensus that the way that Tom Brady is about developing a quarterback and the way he's talked before about not playing a quarterback too early and just the way the complications of a Chip Kelly system where they went and got a quarterback this year at Ohio State, a more experienced, older quarterback. The general consensus seems to be that a lot of people feel like the Raiders are going to at least kick the tires and attempt to trade for a quarterback. I thought that was fascinating. I said to several people, what do you think about the free agent route? And I had one league executive say to me, how do you think Raider Nation would feel about a Jameis Winston and a very favorable deal to the team, but no guaranteed starting? And he was speaking about a backup role. Um, he wasn't saying that he thinks that they're not going to trade. He's just saying I could see them going and getting a veteran and then to have Aiden O'Connell and draft a rookie. He said to me, I could see them trading for a player, having Aiden, and then signing a free agent. He said, I could see him trading for a guy, picking a rookie, and having Aiden O'Connell. But again, the general consensus is everyone seems to believe um, that they're going to kick the tires on a quarterback, that they're going to try to look and see about a trade. So I thought that was really super fascinating. Obviously, everybody seemed to believe that Aiden O'Connell will still be here and that um, that would open a door for either a free agent signing, and this is where the person brought up Jameis Winston, or a going and getting another rookie. Now, I had one person mention to me who is a team executive about the fact that there would be a trade market for Aiden O'Connell. And it certainly wouldn't be as high as where it would have been going into last year. But he said he goes, there would be a market to trade for Aiden O'Connell. Goes, I'm not even, this is his words, quote, I'm not even pretending it's probably a first through fourth rounder, unquote. He said, but I think there could be a chance you get a fifth, a sixth. He goes, I certainly think that you could get him for a set. I mean, that someone would trade with a seventh. He goes, but there's that paradigm if Pete and Chip don't think that Aiden can run their system. That wasn't the consensus of what people thought. He was just saying if they felt that was the direction to go, that there certainly would be a trade market for Aiden. So again, uh, I heard a couple of names, but not enough to report. That would not be wise. But I'm going to keep digging on those names. That the consensus is the Raiders are absolutely, if they haven't, are going to kick the tires on a trading and for a quarterback, and then um, you know decide how they want to fill the rest out. If it's me, and I asked you guys on Twitter, I told you I was asked the question, and I told the person when they mentioned Jameis, I said I'll ask Raider Nation what they think. The overall consensus was no. It didn't seem like Raider fans were real excited about Jameis Winston. And I'm going to be blunt with you. I like Jameis a lot. I think he's a really, really wonderful guy. but you know what you have with Jameis, and you're building for the future. I don't think the Raiders need to go get an older guy um, who is questionable. And when I say questionable, we're not talking about character, but we certainly are talking about, what is he really going to bring to the Raiders? When you got Gardner Minshew, you could have made an argument he was coming off of, having played in a Pro Bowl, and he was decent in 2023. I don't think that's really the case. So if you're asking me what I would think, to me, as much as I like Jameis, this isn't, hiring a Sunday school teacher, or it's not looking for somebody to go have dinner with. I just don't think that's the answer. But I think I could absolutely see the Raiders for sure um, making a trade now, especially after being down here and talking. I, uh, if I was purely guessing, or at least offering what I believe is an educated opinion, I think trade is in play for the Raiders. We're going to watch that very closely, and then watching to see, do they hold on to an Aiden and add a rookie, which would make sense. You'd have some youth there moving forward, but we'll see. But again, I told you the other day that the feeling was absolutely the Raiders already have a plan. I told you I would dig, and I did. And almost every person I talked to said they felt like the Raiders were going to be looking at trades. I asked one particular person, have you heard of any potential trade? And he looked at me and smiled and goes, not that I'm willing to talk about. Again, I heard from a couple people and named that they thought. They didn't have firsthand knowledge. That's why I'm not going to present it at this point. But they thought that a trade was probably a way, but that they certainly felt like even with a trade, there's going to be there would be another quarterback added, at least two new quarterbacks, if not potentially a third, if they should move on from Aiden. So that's the latest of what I have on that situation. I want to talk about again the staff that they've put together. I mentioned that the other day, tinkerers and thinkers, but this is without even a doubt the best Raider staff in the 6 years that I've covered this team. I asked one national play-by-play announcer who does play-by-play on television, who's done Raider games and all that. I said, "What do you think about this Raiders coaching staff?" I said, "And this is only my sixth season. I think it's the best." And his exact words were, he goes, "I think it's the best one they've had in a long time." And I said, how would you define long? He said, decade and a half. He goes, "I think this is a great staff of teachers." So big shout out. Tom Brady was a big selling point, obviously, and we're going to get to Pete Carroll in a minute, but that's a big selling point to be in an organization with Tom Brady. And the Raiders did not go cheap on anyone. Literally went cheap on nobody. And so again, Mark Davis step into the forefront, demonstrating exactly what it is he's looking for and what he wants in his organization. I mentioned the other day how the word everyone who's talked with Tom Brady has heard is first class, first class, first class. Uh, Matter of fact, a league person who saw my podcast joked with me about it. In fact, I got some messages from some Raider players that had heard the term first class already. And I thought that was really fascinating to me, very interesting to watch how the pieces are kind of coming together. I mean, obviously it's there, but how they put this together. Now, I want to talk about Pete Carroll because I think this is really important. I pride myself not in a negative way or in a bad way, but I pride myself in having my finger on the pulse of the league, and I always had tremendous respect for Pete Carroll. And in fairness, I've only heard one person with an ill will to speak about Pete Carroll, and they were coming at it with an agenda. So I don't know anybody other than one person, and they had an agenda that ever had an ill word to say about Pete Carroll. He's a winner. He's a great recruiter, all of those things. So I've always thought incredibly highly of Pete Carroll. Think he was a great option for the Raiders where they are right now in the coaching hire. But I did not have a clue to the depth of. I knew people liked him. I did not have a clue to the level of respect that people have for him. And there is a difference. You can like people and then you can respect them. So I'll give you an example. I like Bill Belichick and I respect Bill Belichick, but there's a lot of people that don't like Bill Belichick. Respect him, don't like him. I knew a ton of people liked Pete, and I knew a ton of people, thought highly of him, but I had no clue about the respect. I walked right up to one guy, um, who's tied competitively to the Raiders. So, he didn't want to really do an interview, but I've known him a long, long time, and I just said, "What do you think of the Raiders getting Pete Carroll?" And he goes, "As a competitor, I hate it." He goes, "But as a guy that loves the game, respects the game, and has not one ill word to say about Pete, it was a no-brainer for them." And people talked about changing culture. Now, I've had a lot of you ask me, what does that mean? What does it mean changing the culture? Are they trying to change what AP instituted? No. AP brought some really good stuff into this organization, but AP wasn't there long enough to change a culture. And I think that there has been in the past a lot of whiners, a lot of people, if they didn't like something, that would just whine. Certainly not all, but one bad apple ruins the whole bunch. Not with all whatsoever. I think there were some guys that felt entitled. And I think that's where a Max Crosby comes in and says, you know what? I've been here all this time. We're not winning. We keep changing coaches all the time. I'm watching good players to be allowed to leave. And he voiced his frustration because he's not one of those guys. You build on a Max Crosby. You build on a Robert Spillane. You build on an Adam Butler. You build with a Jacoby Myers. You build with a Brock Bowers. You build with a JPJ is a guy like that. A Delmar DJ Glaze, the mule. You build with those kind of guys. And I think what you're seeing is that the Raiders understood, to use Tom Brady's term, they didn't look like a first class organization. There was a lot of different camps within the Raider organization. And I think everybody is moving to the same page. Now, I do think that there's going to be changes with the Raiders. We've seen some. JoJo Wooten is no longer there. I would not assume that all of the changes are because, guys were whiners or because guys were bad guys at all. But I think there's going to be some because they've got to get everyone on the same page. Everyone's got to get going in the same direction. I've been harping this on you for a while, and I think they're getting there. I've talked to several players since all the changes have come through, and you're seeing that. Yeah, I can see it. One player sent me a text after the last podcast when I talked about being a first class organization and how Tom Brady's been preaching that. And they go, we're seeing it. And they've shared a couple of things with me that I'm going to wait to tell you about, but we'll get to eventually. So the respect that Pete Carroll brought, um, to me, even though I held him in extremely high regard, I did not realize the respect factor. And around the league, I had one person tell me the happiest person in the desert is not going to be Mark Davis. It's going to be Max Crosby because Pete Carroll is going to match him energy for energy, minute for minute in the building. And Max is going to finally have somebody there who works as hard as him, who operates like him, and in the head coach's office. Thought that was a fascinating quote. So let's talk about now what is the aspect of what people are looking for the Raiders. Now, I can tell you this. I'm gathering information on players that the Raiders are looking at, on what exactly they're looking for hyper competitive guys. There was some names that the previous staff, I think, was looking at who were really good players, could do a lot. But I was told specifically one of them, really good kid, lots of talent, not super competitive, meaning it doesn't bother him if he misses a sprint. And he goes, I don't think that's going to be a Spy Tech Brady type of guy. They want high energy, competitive guys. Now, you got to know those guys are hard to get. So I can tell you this, I have been able to confirm at least over 15 teams that will have tremendous interest in Robert Spillane if he gets to um, free agency. I told you in the last one, I don't expect that's going to happen. I expect that the Raiders are going to get a deal done with him. Right now, I could see probably a 3-year deal with a 1-year option for a team, perhaps a 2 and a 3, but I think it'll be a 3 and a 4-year deal, a 3-year with a 4th-year option. Again, could be a 2 with a 3rd, but that's kind of what I'm hearing. And I had one particular person from a team that would be totally interested in Robert Spillane's exact words say to me, there's no way the Raiders will let him get to free agency. He fits Spytek, he fits Brady, he's still young. He goes, he told me, he goes, if he gets to free agency, we'll be knocking on his door at midnight. He said, but I would not anticipate Robert Spillane, them letting that happen. And he goes, and that's kind of the word that he was hearing. Let's talk about Adam Butler. This is going to be a very highly sought after defensive tackle. Um, I think that he's going to probably end up with a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year option. Maybe somebody would go 3 with a 4th, but I think when you look at his position and all that he does, it's probably going to be a 2-year guaranteed deal with a 3rd-year option for Adam Butler. And again, the sentiment is people really expect that Adam Butler will probably be back. It's not the same sentiment as Robert Spillane. And then the question is going to be, do Robert and Adam's people say, okay, hey, we appreciate your offer, but we want to go to free agency and we want to look. I believe, and you'll understand why I believe this in over the next probably 2 weeks. I believe that if the Raiders offer is fair, which I believe it will be, I want to make that clear. I don't think they're going to go cheap. I think both men would resign to stay here. I think both men want to be here. In fact, I know both men want to be here. And so I would expect the Raiders to have the inside edge there. I think the Raiders would love to re-sign TRE'VON Moehrig and to have him with an IPM, Isaiah Palomao. Do I think the Raiders would like to have Marcus Epps back? I do. Am I as confident in a Marcus Epps return? No, but that's because I'm talking to people around the league and what they think. One person who knows Spytek very, very well and understands his mindset said with the youth at IPM and the youth of Amerig and his belief on re-signing your guys, he told me that is a super big deal for Spytek, that he believes in develop and sign your guys. It breeds loyalty in the locker room, both from them to the team and then the team to them. So do I think that they would like to re-sign TRE'VON? I do. Absolutely, I do. Um, but again, pairing him with an IPM, then you got 2 young safeties, and you still got some guys coming along. Does that mean that a Marcus Epps is out? No, but it depends on what's the cost to bring them back. I think they'd like to, but I think the cost may be prohibited. Not saying he won't be. I'm saying I think there's a chance it may be prohibited. Now, because of the injury, it may very well end up as okay, yeah, maybe, maybe his price comes down a little bit. Again, one other thing that I want to address that I talked about the other day, but it's very important to get this out there. The Raiders are going to be very aggressive towards their type of players. Now, I asked an NFL team executive who knows Spytek well, who knows Pete Carroll well, um, who knows Tom Brady fairly well. I think you could say very well. I said, tell me how you think they're going to approach free agents. Because this is my first one with them, so I want to learn that. And they said something that fascinated me. and they asked me if I'd ever, seen the movie Moneyball about Billy Beane and the A's, and I said, "Yes." And they go, "Not cheap like the A's, not cheap at all. But in that movie, you saw where Billy Beane knew specifically what type of player he wanted, and he didn't deviate." I said, "Okay." And they said, "In free agency and drafting trades, they're going to look for that type of a player, specific things that they want in each position, and they're going to be very disciplined. They're not going to be settlers. They're not gonna say, 'Gee, we couldn't get anybody. Let's try to make this, round peg fit in a square opening.'" So I thought that was really interesting that they used the Billy Beane analogy, but not from the cheap standpoint. I asked this person because he knows them all. I said, the motto under Telesco and even Dave Ziegler was they were going to not be cheap, but they were going to be frugal. They would pay people what they were worth. They said they had not heard me use those terms, but said that's exactly how I would. They're not going to hesitate to pay somebody all the money. They're also not going to hesitate to be frugal and not overpay. And then this person went back and talked about a Marcus Epps. So I think that's fascinating. I think it's the same situation, really about a Malcolm Kuntz. I'm going to tell you, I know the previous administration was leaning towards probably offering Malcolm a 1-year prove it deal, or a 1-year prove it deal that was certain achievements could expand. But there is going to be a market for more than 1 year with Malcolm Kuntz. And that's where the Raiders are going to have to ask themselves. He's been here 4 years, half a year productivity. They're going to have to decide what number is too big of a risk. What number is too big of a risk? Now, you have the situations where Josh Jacobs went and got unbelievable money for Green Bay and it paid off last year. So Raider fans all mad and upset and angry. But when you look over his production, his play, and all of that before, the Raiders fell on the side of frugality and not resigning him. Okay, the Packers benefited from that, and that's why I think with Malcolm it's going to be fascinating. We're going to learn a lot. Do they trust their doctors if the doctors say they're there? Do they trust Malcolm that he's going to come back ready to go? And he's going to come back with that same energy you saw when he played when Antonio Pierce took over. So I think there's a lot of question marks here, but we're trying to at least begin to develop a picture of what the Raiders are going to look like and what this team is going to function as. Now, obviously, tomorrow is the Super Bowl. I'm going to be doing a podcast after the Super Bowl, not really a game recap, obviously, because this is Raider stuff. But at the Super Bowl, I'll continue to gather a lot of information. I have a couple more things I'm working on, so I'll be offering you those. I just won't do it before the Super Bowl because everyone's going to be watching it. Real quick, uh, had chances to talk to everybody involved this week. Um, and I had people say to me, "What do you think happens in the Super Bowl?" I've said all year, I don't think this is anywhere near the best Kansas City team. I still believe that way. I think the defense for the Kansas City is excellent. I think Steve Spagnuolo is terrific. I think that's a really, really good defense. And when we have watched Patrick Mahomes struggle, it's been under pressure. All of that would leave one to think that the Eagles are going to win it. If I had to guess today, I certainly think the Eagles will, although the flu bug went through their team terribly. I don't know how bad. Nobody really does. So if it was as bad as some are saying, but they could also be lowering expectations. You don't know this time of year. So there you go. I think clearly the edge should go to the Eagles here. And I know Raider fan is not going to be rooting for Chiefs whatsoever. So but that's kind of where I think as a partial observer. Of course, I'll be in the stadium. It's going to be a great Super Bowl. I appreciate all of you. I thank you for listening and wish you and your families nothing but the best. So from here in very warm and muggy NOLA, God bless you all. We'll see you.